All right, and we are back. You are live. It is Jack Murphy Live Show. I am Jack Murphy. You can find me on Twitter at Jack Murphy Live. The website's jackmurphylive.com. You can also find me on Instagram everywhere at Jack Murphy Live. Make sure you subscribe to this channel here. We've got today a comedian who is absolutely killing it out there. Every one of you has seen some of his videos and laughed your ass off, sent them to your mom, and hoped that she would get the joke. Ryan Long, how are you? Funniest man in America today. What's going on?
Yeah, dude. When you posted that you were gonna have me on, it seemed like people were pumped. A lot of people were messaging me and stuff.
Yeah.
You got a big group of people that are all excited about whatever you're doing, which is cool.
Yeah, same with you, man. I mean, there's a lot of energy out there. There's a lot of, just a big sort of tidal wave lifting up people with good voices, and you certainly got one. And I want to talk all about your comedy because I find it to be absolutely hysterical. Better than Saturday Night Live. What Saturday Night Live used to, shoulda, coulda, woulda been. And it's also just a powerful tool to make social commentary. But before we get to all that good stuff, Ryan, I don't even know you from a guy on the street, to be honest. So why don't you just tell me a little bit about like how you came to be where you are right now, putting out videos every Monday at youtube.com/Ryan Long Comedy, also producing a podcast called Boyscast, which I want to learn more about. I do like the man cast. You're doing the boys cast. I think we'll be able to figure something out here. Yeah. So
you want to know what's funny? Just in terms of, before even going into that stuff, just this morning, so a couple hours before I talked to you, I released my video this morning, which is called Straight Conversion Therapy. And it's the idea, it's like, people like girls in their 20s, they want to become lesbians, but they still like men. So, it's conversion therapy, but to gay. Yeah, and exactly. YouTube puts a thing underneath being like warning and context warning. This is what straight conversion therapy actually is. And here's a link to this project that tells you more about gay conversion therapy. Oh, dude, every time I do a video on these things, same with any of the COVID stuff, it'll be like the most ridiculous thing. Like I'll say, this is 10 governors having a party or whatever. And they'll be like, just, to confirm these aren't actually governors, they're actors. It's like the context warnings are so hilarious. I did one Joe Biden, I voted for him and it made me black. And then they context warning that they're like, this didn't actually happen. This has been fact checked as false. This guy wasn't actually black.
And that's actual live people doing it too. That's not just the algorithm, right?
That's the context warning's got to be the algorithm because it was there when my video still hadn't been released yet, like when it was still on unlisted. Oh so yeah, Instagram's more where you get hit from people complaining about it because I'll notice that because I'll whenever I do videos with actors, I send them the videos, and the ones that have like smaller followings never get zapped because like enough people just did. So it's only the bigger ones that get hit.
Right. No, not enough haters yet to drag them down. Yeah. Before we keep going.
I can tell you
before we get back to the beginning again, I just want to comment about the governor's one. That was one that stood out to me the most. Just watching. It was basically like a group of governors represented by their worst selves and their like shadow selves and the things that they're not.
Yeah, they're all like bros.
Telling you. Yeah, they're all bros and they're not telling you the truth. And you guys got to check it out. It's youtube.com/Ryan Long Comedy. There's a million smash hits in there, and that's why we're talking.
Which is funny with that one too. So the bit is the governors kept getting caught doing all sorts of like every governor, and then Canada, it's even worse right now. So Canada, all these guys made these insane restrictions, and then 8 different like politicians got caught like going on big trips with like a ton of people and all that stuff. So that was the bit was, governors were giving the new restrictions while they were at a house party. So they're like, doing blow and stuff while they're telling you, you guys gotta stay in your house. But this is such a funny part of like where we are right now is they would make people argue, about left and right. And you go, how is this even potentially a partisan issue that a bunch of politicians are lying? And you go, and even on top of that, like the fact that even the lockdown in general is, being sort of sold as a partisan issue is crazy because it's essentially always a freedom versus authoritarian thing. And I know there's plenty of, older conservatives that are super, into the lockdowns. So obviously they're telling you, like, if you're left, you think they're amazing. Into it. Right? They love them. I'm going to do a video. I'm going to do a video, songs for lockdown.
Oh God.
And I would do anything for love, but take off my mask, stuff like that.
Yeah. So tell me,
Okay.
by way of trying to figure out who you are, dude.
Yeah, I'll give you the scoop, dude.
Your political commentary seems to come from a very pointed direction, and I'm asking you, are your skits reflective of your politics, or are they just a good, deep, rich vein to tap right now?
No, I think it's kind of neither of those. I mean, I'm kind of like I was a punk rock guy growing up and stuff like that. But I think that it's more, people want to put all these like labels. Like I said, it's always these like partisan issues. But the truth is, it's always, to me, you're kind of railing against the one that's telling you what to do. So right now, people said like, oh, why does it seem like you make fun of like the woke stuff more? And I've made plenty of videos making fun of both, but I go, because you're the ones telling me and my friends what to do, and essentially waged war on comedy. It's like, I was watching a video recently of Bill O'Reilly, because I watched one Insane Clown Posse video, and now my entire YouTube algorithm is Insane Clown Posse. But I watched Insane Clown Posse on Bill O'Reilly, and he was saying all the same stuff that, these people were 15 years ago. It's like, this is not good for kids, and you're gonna hurt people's brains, and people need to be shielded from all this stuff. And he was talking about, do you think these lyrics where you said I will stab a guy's neck is bad, and is rap bad for the culture and all this stuff, right? It's the same conversation that's having right now about comedy. And to me, like, if you look at even the question of that, so they're missing like two fundamental things. And the first one is that art like happens independently, or art happens independently of moral good or bad. Like, so whether something's good or bad, if a painting's good or bad and it's good or bad, it's irrelevant whether it's moral or not, right? So the same thing is, math, or like a basketball player. Like, good art, if it's good, doesn't need the approval of like a moral authority, and it doesn't have to, push towards a cause. And if it does, that's called propaganda. The second part is that one of the reasons people make those arts is because of you. So like, they don't like to acknowledge their role in this ecosystem. So, for example, trans stuff used to be like the most important thing, or still is, or whatever, where it's like, this is the thing you can't talk about. And you go, okay, well then why do you think that like Dave Chappelle, Ricky Gervais, Louis all had like 4 minutes about trans stuff in their special? It's like, because you almost like forced them into it when you, and you gave it comedic power, and you give it like artistic power. Just the same reason if you're 10 years old and your parents go, here's the one word you can't say, like, you gave that a lot of comedic power, right? So you say, you can't say poo, and you go, oh fuck, that just got really funny to say, you know what I mean?
Right.
So,
you go, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Poo.
Yeah. Right. And then on top of that, so those are the first two where it's like, that's why those things happen. And then they argue that it's whether it's better or worse, right? And then you get in these conversations of like, is this comedy better for humanity? And the truth is, like, I don't even agree with them there. So when we go like, I'm in comedy clubs every night, and they go, you're doing this type of comedy or whatever that's, subversive. When I do a comedy club and I'm making fun of this group and I'm making fun of that group, I find that brings people more together than when I'm like, if I just picked, I was like, white people are the problem, Trump's bad, and, have this partisan viewpoint. So even on top of the fact that they're like not understanding, in my opinion, how art works, like how it's, why people like it, how energy's formed, like why cultures kind of, exist and why people are drawn to them. And then on top of that, I still disagree with the fact that their art brings people together more. I think that people like me, it's, bringing people together more, and it's cathartic, but also that's not important to me. The important thing is just to make funny videos.
Catharsis. That's not important to you? Like creating an opportunity for catharsis for yourself and for others through your art?
Well, it's important. It's one of those things where all of the best things, in my opinion, have a very specific perspective, and they are drilling on a certain energy. So that's like part of the recipe, but it's not the end goal. So in my opinion, like the fact that that's happening means that like I'm kind of doing it right. But the goal for me isn't to like, create that catharsis. The goal for me is to create like hilarious comedy and be one of the best comedians ever, and kind of, make great specials and make a dent as like an artist.
Mm-hmm. You said you're spending every night in comedy clubs.
Used to
doing stand up. Like, how did you get started doing stand up?
I'm a YouTuber now.
Yeah, you are.
So yeah, I'll go back to your old question. Because I think a lot of people it feels like they're like, this Ryan guy came out of nowhere, right? Which the reason for that is I did because I'm from Canada. I'm from Toronto, Canada. So I don't think people know that. And I got my green card and I immigrated to America a year and a half ago. So I was only here.
Welcome.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I heard that everyone in America is racist, so I moved here to get in on that action. I said, "What? We get in trouble for that? That sounds fun."
It's a rich vein to mine.
I was doing jokes about how everyone when I first moved here they go, "Why would you move here? You're crazy! Like you don't get that people want to move to America." I said, "Americans are sort of like spoiled rich kids, where everyone goes, yeah, you're like, I want to come to your house. You have a pool and a trampoline. You're like, you don't get it. My dad's a Nazi."
Exactly. Like that's good. That is a good one. Oh, you're good with the jokes, dude.
Yeah, I was talking about all that stuff. But that's the thing. So I got my green card. And I moved to America a year and a half ago, and the lockdowns happened. I moved here. Things were moving pretty fast. I got into every comedy club. Like people were, in the because comedians and people always kind of get it a little more than the industry does, right? They're always kind of behind and they have to catch up. But in Canada, before I moved here, I like made a bunch of TV shows. I kind of had this whole career. I was in like a pretty famous band in Canada when I was young. So I've had this like whole career there. I've been doing this, especially I had a sketch show at CBC where I made, tons of sketches. I created the video department for the hardtimes.net, which was like a website that I like was kind of like a part owner of and did helped create all that stuff for. So I've been kind of like making these sketches and like going viral and stuff like that for like years. And then when I moved to America, I was like, I'm just going to do my own thing because it's kind of like a big enough place that I could grow my own thing. So I didn't take any jobs. I wasn't taking any pitch meetings at television stations and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm just going to focus on my own thing. And then I kind of just did the same thing for my own channel that I did like 3 other times for other places.
There you go. DIY, man. You said you grew up sort of punk rock. Was your band when you were younger? Was it punk?
Yeah, we were like a punk band. Yeah, when I was like, so I was always in bands when I was young. There's 2 things. I was always doing bands and I was always making videos. Like I was huge in like Tom Green and stuff like that. And we were releasing all these like Jackass style DVDs with the band. Yeah. And then when I was like 19, so when I was in college, we had like a couple big hits in like the on our like MTV Countdown. So we had a couple big like music video hits and, did the Warped Tour. And we were kind of like, we were big enough to tour for like, we'd have like 1,000 people shows like in metropolitans, maybe do like 500 and, B places or whatever. Yeah. And then, kind of because of that, I ended up doing like a TV show with like some of the band guys that was kind of Jackass, kind of like on the street stuff that I do now, a little of that stuff. And then from that, another TV show. And then I started doing the sketches and blah, blah, blah. And that time I was doing stand up. And so, yeah, it's kind of like I've been doing this for like a while.
It's clearly, it's obvious to anybody who watches the videos that you're, quote, not just a YouTuber. I'm just a YouTuber with this one camera and the bad lighting. You're doing full on produced sketches with scripts and actors and scenes and stage props and costumes.
Just because I'm stupid, dude. I do videos with just me and they like do just as good. And I do them in my like living room. And then I'll be, booking actors, booking places. And my chick's always like, what are you doing? It's like, it's like rule 1, why you keep complicating things. Right. But there's a part of me that's kind of even the things you're saying where I'm like, yeah, because I want to be sort of showing some of these big places that I can do it better than them. So yeah, it's like financially and even like growth wise, it doesn't really make sense, but it's like, I like how it sounds like corny, but I even like looking back at my sketches and like having my little stupid body of work,
Stupid body of work. Yeah. Come on. Of course, it's something you're totally proud of. Do I sense a little chip on your shoulder about the mainstream media biz? I want to show these guys that I can do it. I want to show these guys I can do it better than them. Do you have a vendetta or is it just like, fuck them, I'm doing this my way?
I think because I'm from like Canada and it was so bad there, like, it's very, very difficult to like chisel out a career in entertainment in the communist country of Canada. But so when I came here, it wasn't even really that I never wanted any of those things in America and didn't get them. Like when I moved here, all the people that I thought were cool were part of the counterculture because the industry like lost grip on this whole thing so long ago that they're unappealing. It would be like, if you're into metal and there's like the 5 big metal bands that are signed by I just said that because I assume you are looking at you. But if the 5 big bands that are signed to the record labels have 20 people coming to their shows, and then you watch these people that allegedly are like independent and they're filling out stadiums, it's like, to me, that those are the people that I kind of saw and I was like, man, these guys are doing cool stuff. Like I kind of, the 5 or 6 people that to me I saw were doing awesome stuff weren't part of the industry. That's why they have no power now, because it's funny, like, there was a while where they were like dangling all these things and, they'd cancel you if you didn't act right. They kind of had control. They owned the industry tour. They own the press tour. They've lost control of the press tour. But it's so funny for people like me where they go, it's like, if you do it wrong, we'll cancel you for your jobs. And we're all like, what jobs? We're going to cancel my RSS feed? Like everyone stopped doing any of that stuff. So no one's like, they lost control of anyone wanting to be part of that system. So the only way that they can get people involved is, like, for example, in Joe Rogan, is to drop a big bag of cash on his house, and that's what happens always in culture where it's like, the gatekeepers are lazy and scared. They take too long to catch up. And the only way to get involved after the fact, you're the 10th stage investor in a company. You're not getting the hottest deal. So these people, and on top of that, now there's this added thing where like, my buddy Andrew Schultz just did like a Netflix special. And it's like, they're also paying for you for the fact that like everyone that's ever known you is going to write an article about how bad you are. It's like, there's an added, cost associated with being part of these places where it's like, and the only thing they can offer you is money because they're not really blowing you up the same way that they used to. So it's like you just taking those deals the way that if you wanted to go with like I've had a lot of like these like right-wing places kind of offer me to do things there and you go, but obviously there's like a cost associated with that because like if you did a show at the, whatever, the Blaze or whatever, like, the comedy industry is going to see you a certain way. Like it's, it's not good or bad or whatever, but it's just, there's like a cost associated with that. Like you're not going to be able to do certain other things. So it's like, well, you have to be financially like, paying for the fact that I'm like giving up a whole bunch of stuff to do this. And now it kind of is the other side too. So to me, it's like, it'd be good if there was just like a partisan, cause even like Parler, it's like the free speech Twitter, but you're like, nah, it's right-wing Twitter. It's like, I want to go back to where there was, when it was a record label, they're like, I don't know what these kids are up to. I don't get it, but the kids seem to like it.
Right.
Be like, I don't know what this Ryan Long guy's, but I see the energy. Like I see how fast it's growing. We should get involved with it, as opposed to like, they try to intellectualize it because they're a lot of these people are in their 30s and they still think they get it. It's like, no, you guys are. These millennials, ever hear this? Millennials would be like, just young people, we don't take it. I go, you think you're young? You're 35. Like you got 2 kids to be pretty normal. But these people, they still think they're like with it, but they're not. So, but they haven't accepted that. They still think they're hip and with it.
There's a lot in what you said there, a sort of post-mortem on the music industry. It made me think about how there was 3 main elements to why people want to get signed by a label. I mean, one was like the A&R guy being like, you're the next it thing, right? So there's like a selection process. That was good.
Yeah.
And then they give you money and resources to record, right? Because that was expensive.
Yeah.
And then they promote you, right? And what happened now is you can promote yourself. You can record for pennies and the crowd picks who's hot. Like there's really like,
more importantly, like a lot of these like YouTubers and podcasters are richer than these like television people. Right. It's like, I have friends that are making $1 million a year right now. So it's like Comedy Central coming to them and be like, hey, we're going to maybe make your show if you want to do a bunch of pilots and you can make $500,000 a year. They're like, I'd like make way more than that.
Yeah. And I don't have to deal with you.
And I don't have to deal with you.
I regularly appear on the Timcast IRL. I'll be on Wednesday, every other Wednesday with Timcast.
Do you live around there?
What's that?
Do you live around there?
I'm about an hour's drive to there, so it's not that bad. No, I'm in DC.
He was getting me all scared, dude. When I went to his house, he was all like, what are you gonna do when the war breaks out? Like, do you have a bunker? And I was like, I don't know, maybe go back to Canada. He's like, well, you won't be able to. And I was like, I don't know, die then. He's getting me all hyped up.
Tim has his perspectives. But I bring it up because when you build a YouTube business, it makes it so that all the other opportunities seem pointless. It's like you're not even YouTube, just your own independent production, your own independent distribution, your own creative freedom. It really makes all these institutions seem pointless, and it's on theme for my regular guys, about dying institutions. I mean, you can add the music and creative industry, the film industry, everything to those same set of dying institutions, and you can point to emergent networks of comedians and producers and artists and people that do distribution and do graphics and do creative work, all just sort of coming together and making it work in a way that's actually serving the public in a better way. And it's amazing to see what's been happening with comedy. And I do love talking to guys that were in bands and punk rock and whatnot. I grew up sort of punk rock myself in the late 80s, early 90s in DC. We had a huge punk scene here. Fugazi's based here.
Dude, that's one of my favorite bands.
Yeah. So
the Hard Times guys got me into them. Like I was like into Rancid. Like that was kind of my era.
Yeah.
And the Hard Times guys, those guys were old school, like straight edge punk guys. And I kind of got into like Fugazi and Minor Threat and stuff a little later.
Yeah. DC had it really going on. And then in the early and mid 90s, I did like house parties and like warehouse parties and stuff. And so I've been a musician and a DIY. Hey man, they were raves back then, but that's when they were cool. And they were really dirty and they were really illegal, and it was a lot of fun. Hey man,
you know what I saw?
Changed my mind about a lot.
I'm not making fun. I like that stuff. We're talking about going to, me and some of my friends are talking about going to Tulum.
Yes.
Yeah, dude, because they're rocking right now, over there. That's
one of my favorite places in the whole world.
There you go. We went to, but when me and my friend Danny were dying because when the night Trump the election happened and Trump was lost or whatever.
Or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I have friends that are still like, he's a lock. Like, you don't even know. He's gonna take. I don't know.
I have followers the same way, and I'm like, no, bro. Just no.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. But.
For your mental health, I care about my followers. I care about everybody. Please, guys, prepare yourself. January 6th. January 21st. Prepare yourself, please. Anyway, proceed.
Yeah. They were. I actually did a election special that night, and I bet on Trump because I was doing it in like New York at the Stand Comedy Club, and everyone, it's like New York comedians or whatever. So and I'm not even from this country, and I've never voted in my life. Like, it's just not. I'm not. But I put like $1,000 on him just because I thought it'd be like funny if he won, and then everyone was like crying, and then on top of that, I just won like $1,500. Yeah. So I made a whole shtick about it. And look, it seemed like he was going to win, but then after, when it took off, when he didn't, they essentially had the biggest party in Williamsburg, right? So they had this huge field, and everyone was just there on Molly. Like they had like all the Burning Man stuff, and just thousands of like Brooklyn kids, just like they're so high on Molly and with glow sticks, the whole thing. And me and Danny were like, it's pretty funny. Their two options tonight were this or tear down the city.
Right. Same people.
Yeah, it's 100%. Like either they had like glow sticks on one drawer, right, and then they're like mallets and Molotov cocktails in another drawer, and they're like, right, all right, I guess
I'm ready to go either way. I'm dressed in black.
Yeah. I'm dressed in black.
I got my sunglasses for the morning. Yeah, it's been a curious time, and every time you say you're not even from this country, I laugh. I'm like, Canada is like, I swear, you guys are like our cousins. It's similar but different. I remember watching Degrassi Junior High when I was younger, and I was like, this looks like it looks like a middle school, but it's just nothing. It's all wrong. There's just like everything is just off. Just a little
like Shelbyville.
Bit. Yeah, I just never understood it. Canada, we got a lot of good Canadian guys in the liminal order. No slight to you. And Canada does seem to produce an inordinate amount of comedians. What do you make of that?
There's like two reasons for it. One is that the first one is not a reason, but it's like almost that you're wrong. So the first thing is that a lot of people, they see people like me and like my little group of friends that are in New York that are Canadian. They'll be like, man, all the Canadians are so funny. And you go, well, yeah, the 10 of us that are here, like there's thousands of terrible comedians. You just don't see them. Yeah. So there is this like bias that you only see the good ones. Yeah. So that's one part of it. But but that being said, there is actually like kind of a higher level. And there's two reasons. One is because with stand up, for example, it's like takes a really long time to get good at it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people here, there's more opportunities, so their growth will be a little bit stunted. Like if you're like 4 years in and you get, you start booking late night, you start to shift your, it's the band that like way too early got signed and started trying to make the single. So a lot of these people, they start, it's to be great, you have to like be ready to fail. And it's very hard to fail when there's like 10 people that are older than you and, have done this before, kind of telling you what to do and watching your every move. It's driving with the cops behind you, right? So a lot of people become cautious and sort of, ink out a career rather than like get great at the thing. So I think a lot of people that come here, it's like they've done it for so long. Like even with the race stuff, which is like one of my topics that, like people, to me, a lot of stuff, people will be like, man, how do you say that stuff? That's so crazy. Like they'll be, what are you, out of your mind? Like, but to me, I'm like, this isn't even, I've been doing this forever. Like, I'm like, I've done that joke on stage 1,000 times. I know it works. So you kind of know the exact boundary and you know where it is, where people are like, you can't say that. And I'm like, I've been saying that, for a year straight, 3 times a night. So I know exactly. It's like, I know where those lines are and I know exactly if I'm crossing them or not. It's a little tougher on the videos, but like at stage especially. So there's like that empirical testing component that you become like an expert at it. So I think that's one of the reasons. And then my last potential reason is that Americans, I always have this theory where if I'm going to make
here we go.
Okay, so it has to do with IQ and no, it has to do with the number of people that died in a certain war, and that war is the Battle of 1812. It's a Canadian reference.
Oh,
What do you think I was gonna say? No, there is whenever I want to talk about something, like say I'm mad, even if you're mad at your chick or like, maybe it's like something about politics, I always really, really try to make myself not angry about it. Like I have to like come to terms with this issue before I can make it funny. And I think that's why, when you see people making fun of Trump, a lot of times it's like, he's a friggin' orange piece of garbage. Like they're mad. Right. And it's like, it doesn't mean you can still have like a gripe, but I think until you like remove the venom, it doesn't work. I don't think it's better. I think it's worse. So I think that America's more serious. And Canada's very serious now. Like everyone copied you into the 2016 disaster kind of years, right? But up until that point, I think that, it was a little more about skateboarding and getting drunk and people weren't so wrapped up in this stuff. So there's a little more of like, you can look at it unbiased. And even certain issues, like when we talk about the race stuff, like we didn't have the same problems as you, right? So there isn't so much, it's same reason there's not venom attached on one end. There's not pain attached on the other end. Like when we talk about, me and my friends, I grew up in like a super multicultural neighborhood, multicultural friend group. So, this was just something we always talked about, but there wasn't like an underlying thing that, someone's ancestors were slaves. Like that didn't happen in Canada. These people's parents, your grandparents, like immigrated there from Jamaica or wherever it was. Right. So there just isn't this like history of, someone who's, let's say their grandparents like had to go to a separate school. Like there's a lot of, a lot of anger and a lot of like pain associated with Americans' history and American culture on all sides, and I think because of the removal of that allowed you to sort of, operate in a comedic and artistic realm a little more without sort of all of that, infecting it.
It's interesting that you said that. Man, a lot in there. I want to come back to career versus getting great at your craft. That's an interesting dichotomy. You mentioned that it's for you had to be a little bit processed with the emotion or processed with the event or the idea in order to actually make the joke work. And you were saying that the people hanging on to the anger or whatever, it doesn't hit and it comes out wrong.
I think so.
Yeah. In my personal experience with my art and writing, especially in the books and stuff that I've written, to me, that is actually part of my catharsis, my cathartic process, and like tapping into that specific energy, that emotion, whether it's like rage or hurt or pain or love,
and I'm only
hope or joy,
comedy only, and it's
right.
It's only a certain type of comedy, true, because you're right. If it's some angry rapper, and I'm like, my argument isn't that like he needs to get rid of the anger, but
well, I wanted to explore why it may be good in comedy that way. Like when Chris Rock does a whole bit on like teaching his kids to hate white people by making everything in his house that is hot, heavy, or sharp, making it white so that he always gets burned or smushed or stabbed by white things, so that everywhere he goes out in the world he sees white and he's afraid. Like, that is that a joke that's made in the in the throes of dealing with something, or that's after you process it and you can look back on it clinically?
Stand up has, again, like, it's such a complicated topic, because in stand up there's two versions. Like, Bill Burr could be on stage ranting and being angry, but a lot of times the implication is that he's wrong, right? The implication is sort of like I'm overreacting, right? So, and that kind of goes back to, when you're trying to make these like nuanced, like cultural points, like I am, there is something to be said about, like, no one wants to trust an angry person, right? Like, if someone comes in yelling and screaming at you, like, you just don't want to hear what they have to say. And you also know that they're being influenced by their emotions. Like, I don't want to hear a solution for, the debt crisis by someone who's crying at the moment. You want to, so I think there's like a nuance to it. And then on top of that, when you're trying to be funny, when you're still mad, you're more concerned about being right. And I think once you lose the anger, you're more concerned about being funny. So it's like, sometimes that's even more powerful, right? Like, the amount of times people say, and again, this isn't the purpose, but it's just like a function. The amount of times people will be like, see my videos, and they've been like, I've been like arguing with someone about this at parties for like friggin' 8 months. And then I just showed them their video and we're like, oh, I kind of see where you're coming from. Cause it's like, like, humor can be, it's sort of like if you have, a friend that's like always like hitting on your girlfriend or something weird like that, or someone at work, right? And it's like you're like pissed. What are you doing, dude? And it's like this thing, right? But then if it comes into like, if it starts being, you tell everyone, you're like, yo, watch, this guy always like hits on my girlfriend, and it becomes like funny to you. Then the guy comes and it's like, he's like, tells your girlfriend anything at this point. He's like, oh, how you doing? Oh, that thing you did was funny. Everyone's like, oh, he's back at it again. Like, and it actually is more, it's actually more effective in undermining this guy, as opposed to you just yelling and screaming and everyone's like, yo, Ryan's friggin' crazy about his girlfriend. Like, this guy maybe didn't do anything. But if you just kind of like, it doesn't bug me, I actually think it's funny. And it actually probably was more effective in like dealing with that problem of this guy that, whatever, keeps, making weird comments. It's like, because you've humiliated him now, as opposed to, battled him.
Oh, man. Such a great point. I'm going to come right back to that in just a second. We used to have a phrase for this in the old pickup days called an amused master.
You were a pickup artist?
No, definitely not. But I definitely read.
Isn't Cernovich a pickup artist?
Mike and I are old friends. We met each other on a MMA message board in like 2009.
Oh, nice.
Honest to God. And speaking of Tulum, he had his wedding in Tulum at my suggestion, and I was in his wedding like in 2015 or 16 or something like that. Anyway, Mike and I came up through some of the same spots. Pickup artists, no. Did we participate in that community? Sure. Did we read did we read a lot of that stuff? Sure. Did we write a lot of stuff like that? Sure. Did I
That was my two Bibles, The Art of the Deal and The Game.
The Game. I mean, the hard copy is as nicely put together as a Bible. I don't know what happened to Neil Strauss afterwards, but anyway.
Who's the other guy? Mystery. So Mystery. I did a pickup artist video the other day, and my friends were sending it to Mystery and apparently thought it was funny. But Mystery's so funny because he was like the pickup artist guy, and then he basically came out like 10 years later. It was like, I'm a loser, I shouldn't have said it. He kind of backtracked it. But the funny part about Mystery stuff was, I know The Game, there's like, it's more psychological, but it always made me laugh, the Mystery stuff, because it was kind of like, it's all like the card tricks and big hats and stuff like that, which works it's like for one specific personality, if you're like the wacky guy that like doesn't care about everyone thinking you're a loser. But for everyone else, you're like, it's just some like fat nerd like doing card tricks at a bar with a wacky hat on.
Right. Doesn't work. Not to go too far down this tangent but the Mystery, I'm going to give him some credit. He had a really good plan for like, if you meet somebody, venue bounce. That's like the most important thing. If you meet
Time
somebody,
traveling, Dante Nero called it.
yeah, and you meet them and then say, hey, let's go over to this other place, and then let's go to this other place, and before you know it, it feels like you're on your fourth date, and you build some rapport that way. And that was actually some really good advice. But anyway, we used to have this concept called
my advice is just get in a relationship and let them slowly eat away at you and your finances and
your soul, especially.
And just
eat their soul while your stomach, your belly just explodes the emptier your heart gets.
That's my life hack. That's my pickup life hack.
Well, apparently it's most of America's at this point. Amused mastery. That's what we called it, where like something sketchy or shitty happened and you just kind of laugh, like you understand exactly what's going on and mock them instead. You come back with mockery. And you said that humiliating.
Even in the mocking, you can sometimes see the venom. Like you can see when people are like, ha 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 ha, and you're like, you're not actually finding this funny. You're just pretending to laugh because you're mad. So that's what, you know what, I'll tell you, bring this back to pickup artistry, because stand-up is a lot like that. No, stand-up is a lot like seduction, right?
Yes.
But the idea is that, when with girls, like I remember, I don't know all the terminology, but like, I played in bands and like hung around like dudes like that. And it was kind of like, how do you get girls like you? It's like, you kind of need to not care, right? And then you'd have another group of guys being like, well, how do I act like I don't care? And it's like, no, you actually have to not care. That's right. Like you have to find a way to mentally not care. So it's like, and then if the girl leaves, you actually didn't care. And so it's not a trick. It's like, you have to actually not care. And I think that with this, it's like, no, you don't have to pretend you don't give, you're not invested in these issues. You actually have to like remove your investment. So I think a lot of it is that. And I think that people will interpret what I'm saying as like, oh, you like, laugh at them instead. No, but the most important part is like, you have to like come to peace with the things first in order to, like if you're watching the election and you really, really care who wins, right? Like this is so important to you. And then the next day you're like, oh, I'll just pretend I find it funny. It's like, well, no, you don't though. So I think that's like the psychological part that, maybe some people miss.
The pain, the real pain's not funny. And whether it comes out in somebody's anger or in their bite like or their tone,
guy falling down the stairs or something, and
and then his own anger. So, but I wanted to talk to you about ridicule. My mom's calling me for some reason.
She just called me earlier.
Oh, dang! boom. Ridicule. It's one of the rules for radicals. Ridicule is being like a very effective way to diminish another person's position, their belief, their standing, their status. Where does ridicule play in your sketch work? I mean, is this ridicule? Is that what we're doing? We're making fun of both the woke and the white supremacists. That one being one of my favorite sketches of yours for sure, especially at the beginning when they were the jinx. But it sets the tone. I mean, where do you see ridicule in your sort of arsenal? Is that the weapon you're deploying, or what is it?
Yeah, it's definitely like one of them. But I think that most great jokes or great, art pieces to some degree have a target, right? Especially when they're like cultural relevant. And there's always that sort of, old saying that you kind of say more about yourself by talking about what you're against than what you're for, right? Yeah. But the problem is, it's like, not the problem, but what the thing that people miss in terms of like ridicule is they miss what you're ridiculing, right? Because if you're on stage, for example, and you're like making a joke about like trans people or whatever, like a lot of times, right? A lot of times people will be like, oh, you're making fun of trans people. Like that's who you're ridiculing. And you're like, no, I'm making fun of the fact that I can't do this. It's like, I'm making fun of you for like putting these laws on what I'm allowed to talk about. So I think a lot of times the ridicule, can be a bunch of different things, but at the end of the day, it's always kind of back to who's the person telling you what you can and can't say. And I think, especially in like speech oriented fields, that becomes the enemy. So, a lot of people is like, well, there's all these other people that are doing all this bad stuff. It's like, well, yeah, I'm a comedian in New York City. So obviously this is kind of my cardinal issue, the same reason that these people, it's like, well, why is your not issue the, Uyghur Muslims in China? Why is that not your cardinal Facebook post? It's like, well, because you don't live there. That's why.
Right. Interesting. Interesting. So for you, your motivation in many ways is against the censors, against the politically correct, against the people that want to stifle what you can and cannot say. And these issues that you've selected highlight that.
I think
Uh,
it's where I naturally go. So maybe
okay.
there's a bit of both, but like that's like intellectualizing it more than that's what my gut finds funny. And I think if you were to like to dissect why,
Yeah.
it's because they're the ones that telling me what to do. Like, you know, it's like if you do a funny joke in like the back of the class and it's like you're like, why was that funny? And then like you dissect it at the end of the day, it's because it like pissed off the teacher, whatever, right?
Right.
So I think there's some of that in there, but and yeah, those are those are like the people that I've that are clamping down on me and my friends and telling me what to do or whatever, the most that I see. But all of that stuff just becomes your like instincts, right? And it's kind of like there's this old, I think it was a, can't remember, it might have been Scott Adams. It was an old like writing thing, and it goes, you know, write with your head, but decide with your body or something like that. And it's very true. Like I'll write, but it's like you can tell when your body gets excited about something, right? Like, oh my God, that's funny. And then sometimes you're doing, you know, what Jon Stewart called like synthetic comedy, where it's like it feels like comedy, smells like comedy, but it's not quite comedy. Like, do you ever do a show where you're like, oh, I have 10 things I want to talk about, and this is, oh, these are good points. And then you kind of do a show, you know, once in a while where you look at it and you're like, I don't know if I'm saying anything here. Like, if these feel like points and sound like points, but I don't know if I'm really, you know, it's just maybe
It's about how I'm feeling about right now.
maybe just not on in that moment, you know? But
Yeah.
like, and you can get, your body gets excited about it, right? So I think that I try to look for those. And, you know, that's why like cultural movements take place, like even in Seattle or whatever, when they're the kind of reaction to what the music was before. It's like everyone's like, it gets exciting, right? So there's a certain type of thing that gets exciting to me, certain things that make me funny. Like, and like, you know, there's a point where I was super attracted to like making Muslim jokes. And I had 2 specials in a row where I was doing 7 minutes, to the point where like people at the comedy clubs were just like, yo, you're like obsessed with this, right? And I was, and if you were to dissect it, it was like the reason why it was so funny to me was because like you kind of used to be able to do that, and then you kind of couldn't, but you can make fun of Christians where it's almost like a little, you know, to some degree hacked, although they're kind of getting mad again. But to some degree, it's like easy to make fun of Christians. So they're anti-religion. So you can't make fun of Muslims, but you can make fun of theirs. So it's like the whole thing is like this pretzel where you're not supposed to do that, but their reason's illogical. You're like, you're not supposed to make fun of that. And it's like, why? It's like, well, you shouldn't make fun of people's faith. And you're like, well, you make fun of their faith. And they're like, yeah, but they're white. So I think that whole thing just made like, tickled me. You know what I mean? So I'll find those things. They'll just like make me laugh so much. And that's kind of like, I follow that more.
It's fascinating. The same conversation can be applied to every artistic ever. I've had authors on and directors, and I asked them, you know, what was this intended, and was there meaning behind that pencil behind the thing on the bookshelf, and you know, and at the end of the day, it's like you're right. There's some general idea where we want to go, but it is instinct, right? And I guess that's why people who are tops of their field in these crafts, you know, are operating on feel. Rather than a top-down nerdy approach, like
I think that's when you mess it up, right?
Component, yeah.
Yeah.
One interesting thing that I had been thinking about and seeing, you know, I go to like local stand-up clubs here in DC, or I used to back before the plague.
Yeah.
And you know, I grew up watching, you know, Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor and George Carlin and Saturday Night Live with my dad through the 70s and early 80s. Back when you could say things like "Jane, you ignorant slut," and everybody just laughed, and it was so funny.
Yeah.
And one of the things I wondered, and then I wrote some stuff, and it got me in a lot of trouble, man. I wrote
Really?
Oh yeah, I made fun of feminists, and I made fun of, you know, just
when was it?
This was like in 2015, 2016.
Peak
and
Cafe years.
Yeah, and some of the stuff was people took the wrong, absolute most wrong way. Like I did a piece where I was like sort of advocating for RAPE. I'm not even going to say the word right now, right? And of course it's a joke. Of course,
yeah.
it's not
I mean,
serious.
Louis C.K. has a joke like that.
Okay, but this you're making my point. Louis C.K. maybe can say it and get away with it.
Maybe not now as
can
much.
say and get away with things. I said it in the same vein, didn't get away with it. Dude, I paid with my job. I paid with my career. I paid with my life. basically. Like I got doxxed and canceled and the whole thing, right? But it was the same concept. It's like I'm on the edge, I'm trying to be subversive and edgy, and I'm trying to push back against the censors and make a political point and all these things all at once. Also just express myself, also just be absurd. All at the same time. None of it is meant to be taken seriously.
Did you lose your job as an RAPE counselor?
No, actually, I got promoted. Then a guy like Chris Rock can come on and say all these horrible, horrible, terrible things like we need to kill white babies. I want to see more dead white babies, more dead white babies, or whatever. And everybody laughs. It's funny, and I think that there's many, many layers to his critique there. But like, at what point do comedians go through a similar life cycle in that if you're fresh, do you just not have that clout, that equity, that built up reputational sort of buffer that allows you to be
and also
totally
skill.
out there?
And also skill, right?
Yeah.
That's there is like, a lot of comedians, there's the Jerry Seinfelds of the world. They're like, funny's funny, anything's funny. And, I've heard a lot of people be like, a joke's either funny or it's not. And it's like, well, that's not really true, because obviously, like, if I was doing if I was making a sex joke and I walked in and it was like my grandma's funeral, like everyone would be like, what the hell are you doing? And if I was like a bunch of my boys drinking, they would, obviously like context is important. Everyone like kind of understands that internally, right? But there is, in stand up, it's like you're pushing those boundaries a little. So whenever people start doing stand up, and especially people that, like someone like me was, there's a lot of people in Toronto that like I was their guy, you know what I mean? So to them, and they're always like, I want to be like, but I'm always like, no, learn how to tell a friggin' joke about buses. Like learn how to, you're trying a triple axle and you don't know how to skate yet, So these are difficult. And that's one of the reasons I like stand-up comedy better, than anything, because there is still this like objectivity where on the internet, you kind of find people, you find your people, right? And then if you don't like it, you can be, oh, this was too much on the other side. And if you make some really edgy joke on the internet and you're like, say like, kind of like an edgy right-wing guy, right? Some of these people, and people don't like it, you can just call them a cuck, right? And then the other people are like, oh, you're just not based enough. Like, and then the other way, it kind of like, if they do it and they go, oh, you're not woke enough. Like everyone they get to just justify it in terms of like their paradigm, right? Whereas on stage, it was like, well, no, there's both people sitting there, right? So it's like, you actually had to make it work. Like you can't just justify your jokes intellectually like you can on the internet. It's like, oh, you're just a pussy, so that's why you didn't like it. It's like, if there's a room full of people and they're laughing, the court's decision's been made, like the jury has spoken, and I know right now sort of whatever progressives kind of want to add another vein where it's like, to me, comedy is a contract between your conscience and then the audience. So if they laugh and you felt fine about it, then that's the end of the story. They want to add a third level where like someone else can write about it after and be like, this was inappropriate. And you're like, well, not according to the 500 people that were like dying laughing. And they go, I remember when the Shane Gillis thing happened, this writer came to the stand and he was like, and then he said this and this, didn't mention that he's murdering. Like, yeah. And a liberal New York audience was finding it hilarious. So they want to remove the nuance and kind of write the jokes down and pretend that, reality isn't actually happening. But
does stand-up does it create a temporary environment that allows the audience to behave differently?
Yeah, it can. Yeah. But it's all of, yeah. So the fact that you're in some of them go the opposite way. Like if you go to Brooklyn, there's these shows where it's like, you feel like you're in a church, right? It's like the opposite. It's almost like you feel kind of like you need to say, not me, but if someone that was starting, you'd probably go there and you're like, I need to be, on better manners here than whenever I was, shooting the shit with my family. Right. But so it depends on the environment. But if you go to, like the underground comedy clubs and you're in a basement, the lights are off. I mean, that's a huge part of the psychology. The more the lights are off, the more people will laugh, right? The more a table's not sitting too close to someone that they've never met before, they'll probably laugh more. There's a lot. And then the way that the comedian lets them laugh, right? So if you go up, and this is why I do different things in different cities. Like if you go up and you're kind of worried about, you're kind of progressive and you're like, you're not really in the game like this. You know what I mean? You're just like, I don't know. I want to have the right opinions. I just grew up in New York. I guess I'm not racist, right? Like you're that guy, right? You're not like in it, you're not blogging about people. And then the comedian starts doing racist stuff. You're like, can we laugh at this? But if the comedian can sort of make you feel like, trust me, like we're, these people are crazy. We can make, and then they go, okay, like, you need to trick people into like getting on board your train, like, and use different ways to do that, right? Make people feel comfortable. Because and they're not wrong. Because if I go on stage, if I'm watching someone and then, I'm laughing and they're kind of doing edgy stuff, and then you see him, backstage, and you're like, this guy like legitimately is in the Ku Klux Klan. You'd be like, yeah, I don't know if I want to hear that guy make racist jokes anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's all like the context of that. When I go to the small towns, I kind of usually go more like anti-white and more anti-religion. When I'm in like metropolitans, I'm usually more against, all this stuff. I'm usually going like pro-white. Like I go hard. I started like I did an all black show, and I started with talking about white power and stuff. Like I kind of, naturally against whatever the energy of like the situation is like. Sort of somewhat contrarian, somewhat antagonistic, somewhat just like being a pest. Like a lot of my comedy is just like being a pest.
Interesting. I wonder if the anonymity of the internet provides some of the same function that the darkness in the house at a live show does, in that it allows people to feel a little bit freer, a little bit safer, to have reactions to certain things that they may or may not have if they were standing there in a line and there's a camera,
Yeah, and they're like, I'm not going to even watch this. Yeah,
right. Exactly. So it's interesting, that dynamic, that creator audience dynamic. And it's also interesting the feedback cycle. You tell a joke in the club, you get a laugh, it's instant. The internet, you kind of get some of the similar feedback. And in this case, the house lights are so dark, you can't even see the crowd, right? You can't even see the crowd. All you get every once in a while is like somebody yelling something up on stage at you by way of a notification or like a comment or something. That's fascinating. I've always been fascinated with stand-up, the environment within stand-up. And as somebody that is, now that I've been canceled and can't be canceled anymore for the rest of my life. Fuck everybody.
Are you full on canceled?
I'm full on canceled and full on outlaw, full on pirate, and it can't be touched. I'm uncanceled.
Rock and roll, brother.
Thank you. It's a good place to be. It's a good
place
to be.
It kind of is, yeah. There's some peace there, right?
Oh, dude, so much peace. In fact, I'm at the most serene and peaceful of my life I've ever been, perfectly aligned with mission, values, action, everything. And to the people that canceled me and all that Antifa bullshit from all those years ago, in a way I say thank you, because I am definitely in a new, better, happier place for sure. So but in this same space, it's like there's still almost some lack of freedom that I see available in stand-up. Stand-up to me feels like a free pass. It's like this zone where you can just go and the judgments don't happen.
I mean, I could list off 100 people that have been, kind of canceled for something they said on stage. So it depends on how you look at it, right?
No, I'm setting this up, right? To say like that to me is what it used to be like watching Carlin and Richard Pryor.
I mean, again, though, I can't even forget Lenny Bruce. Sorry. Like, you know what happened to Lenny Bruce.
I explain for the listeners.
Okay, so Lenny Bruce was essentially it was the opposite. So like at the time, the sort of puritanical forces was more the sort of the religious lobby, and he was doing jokes about sex. Again, that's why when people talk about like politics and the things I'm doing, like it's important. I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm going in a basement and talking about sex to strangers. But like, so Lenny Bruce was talking about sex and stuff that would probably be considered fairly mild now, and then he got sued by the government, like all the same stuff that's happening now. Like they basically shut him down. He had to go to court. He wasn't allowed to perform. He got banned. They would raid his videos like they were a gay bathhouse and like take him down. So, there's always been, waves, and if you're in China right now, you think you can go on stage and just say whatever you want. Like, of course not, right? True. So right now, that's what's happening in a lot of places. Like, what happened with like Count Dankula in Europe and in the UK, and then in Canada, we have something called the Human Rights Tribunal. And I don't know if you know what Mike Ward is, but Mike Ward made like the wrong joke about the wrong guy, and he got fined $100,000. And he's kind of popular, he's been done Rogan. He's like very successful Quebec comedian. But there's other people that got fined like 50, 60 grand. And it's just like some barback, said like called the wrong girl, like the wrong thing on stage. And then he got, he had to go to the Human Rights Tribunal, get a lawyer, ruined his life. 100 articles about how this guy's the worst. That's partially like what the kind of the part of the fight, like Jordan Peterson was talking about in like Toronto. So
that's why all the Canadian comedians are in America, obviously.
Well, yeah, 100%. This is 1,000 times better. And everyone in the industry is so full of shit. Like, even just from the people being mad, it's like, no, you're not. Like, oh, I'm so offended. You're not. And I do clubs in, metropolitans every night for the last 10 years, like I said before this, we were talking about, and then you go, everyone laughs and blah, blah, blah. And then people go like, this is inappropriate. People are mad. They're sick of hearing this. You go, no, they're not. People find it funny. That's what they say to me. You go, you're just mad that people don't want to hear your like sexist jokes or whatever. And you go, I destroy. I'm really good at comedy, and plenty of people want to hear my jokes. And they also understand that, it's not coming from a bad place or whatever. Right. So they're lying. They're lying about people not liking it, and they're lying about them being mad. And that's kind of what's going on in all those places. So
yeah,
the amount of people that have messaged me, there was a couple comedians in Toronto that like, got really mad about my stuff. And they're like, Ryan's going down a bad path and this, and, they're kind of going on me. Right. And I go, just so you know, like 10 of your best friends message me telling me it's hilarious. So it's like, you guys are all such like, they're all clout chasers. They're all lying. And, a lot of them just following whatever they think is the right opinion at the time.
Jealousy, I think, has a lot to do with it as well. Well, you kind of shit all over where I was headed with this question. Well, just that, okay, let's say there's ups and downs to the freedom on stage. Let's say that in Canada, it sucks because you got the human rights thing. And if you say the wrong thing, you get fined 100 grand. Fine. Canada sucks. No free speech. Sorry, Canadians.
Country can suck my dick, dude. I'm out of that hellhole.
There goes the monetization on this one.
That's it?
Suck my dick? I don't know. I'm thinking maybe.
Come on.
I
get monetized on some pretty dicey stuff. So.
Yeah. What advertiser right next to suck my dick? I don't know. We'll see.
Well, bleep that. You can bleep that out in post.
Live. Oh God.
No. Well, yeah, but
for the clips.
Or you can go into the final video before they demonetize it and just take out that little tiny bit of audio if you want.
I will. We're gonna suck my bleep.
You said
anyway,
I the F word, so
I did. It's all good. I wasn't counting on my $14.
Look at me getting censored by Jack Murphy Live.
Can we at least grant that on stage at a comedy club at night with no TV, maybe one of the freer places?
Yeah.
To go speak your mind. So I find that very, very attractive, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're joking around with your buddies, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it seems like it's a safe space, as
it were. You know what I always say about that? It's kind of like this idea where this is the problem with like, and comedy's always been dominated by kind of like nerds and, like a feminine energy. And again, I'm not like some crazy masculine guy. That's just what it is. But it's kind of like when a girl wants to hang out with you and your boys and there's like 6 guys there and the girl's like, you have to bring me. And then she gets there and she's like, also, you can't talk about that. And don't say that. And you're like, this is why we didn't bring you. Right. So it's like the comedy clubs are a little like that. It's like everyone's allowed to say anything. And then someone comes in and they're like, you have to let us here. And they're like, also, you can't do that. You go, this is why you're not supposed to be here, you idiots. Like don't be here if you're not coming to, let people try to be funny.
Right. And that's actually endemic in our entire culture right now. It's like, we're over here doing this thing. It's totally harmless and fine. And then people want in and then they want to change it and they want to co-opt it. You're just not allowed to do anything anymore. So you're totally discouraging me from all of this. Stand up, I always thought it was something that I would like to try. Not that I'd be good at it, but I'd like to try. What was it like getting started for you? How much stage time did you put in before you were like, okay, kind of funny, kind of getting it?
Learned how to kill pretty quick. Well, I was already like doing, comedy for a while before I started stand up, but I started killing like pretty quick. And then I got worse. And then around like 7 years, I was like pretty consistently like around 5 years, I was like consistently like a good headliner that was killing. And then around 7 years, it started being good. Like 5 years, and then you kind of realize, I was like killing and I was like, oh man, I'm sick at stand up. I'd leveled the room. And then, and then after you realize you're like, oh, but that sucked. So I kind of see that now with some people. You're like, they murder, and you're like, yeah, but it's crappy.
What was your regression? You said that you had gotten good and then you kind of fell back.
I think a lot of people do that, but my thing was kind of difficult because I was already like kind of famous, when I started doing it. So it's like I was trying to get good really quick. So I kind of had good instincts at the beginning, but then I was watching other people and I wanted to jump so quickly that I was like probably going down paths that made me do better than get better. So I think I kind of like started going in directions that were, like I said, would get you booked more, or, you would do better in the room. Here's a perfect example. When I first started, I was a little more like how I am, cocky, and I was kind of doing what I do. And then I sort of regressed into a little more like stuff that could kill anywhere, and self-depreciating stuff, and sort of, stuff that doesn't really like suit my personality. It was more just like what I was watching, like the people that were doing good. I go, oh, I was kind of doing it wrong. And then once I got good, I sort of like morphed back into who I actually am again. So it's like I kind of became someone else. And then I got good enough to sort of be myself again. One way to even say it is like, I noticed these comedians that, when you see a comedian doing like a big act out, like he's rolling around on the ground, he's doing all this sort of stuff, right? And you're like, that better be killing, because if he's rolling around the ground, it's bombing. Like that's so awkward. Right. And I was kind of doing things that were, hard tricks. Like I said, I was, kind of being aggressive. I was dressed crazy. Like I had tattoos, and I had like way more rings, and I was a little dressed. I just dressed more like wacky when I was younger.
More like mystery.
Yeah, a little more like mystery, dude. I looked like a rock star, you know what I mean? Like that's how I was like dressed.
Pickup artist.
Right. So it's like when you walk on stage, everyone's like, you better like screw this guy. Like, I hope he fails. Right. So you need to like overcome all those things. So then I eventually I was like stripping my look down. Like I would go to clubs and I would just like kind of dress in normal shirts and stuff. And then once I got good again, I kind of would like soup it back up, and I would go a little more aggressive, because now I'll walk on stage and I'll have like be so cocky, and people will kind of be like, oh, this guy, I hope he like does, look at this idiot. And then I'll be like, and then by the end, not even by the end, like in a second, they'll be like, okay, I'm wrong. This guy rules. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So you kind of earned your right,
What is your favorite sort of technique? I've watched so much Dave Chappelle, and like he seems to be a kind of guy that can make a 90-minute joke. Right. It's like he like set it up with the first sentence, and the punchline is the last sentence, and it's all one long story and continuity and loop backs, and it's so well crafted. It's so well crafted. What do you like to do? What's your like style, when it comes to stand up?
I kind of James Altucher described what I do as an oblivious narrator. So it's like I'm following, logic to wrong conclusions, and then acting like, what? What's the issue here? What did I do wrong?
Interesting.
So I kind of I do a lot of that stuff. I think that'd probably be the best way to. And also, I like huge jokes, but disguised as like nothing. So a lot of American comedy, and this is kind of the difference between American and British. So American comedy is a lot of times like taking a joke that's like an 8 and juicing it up to a 9, whether that be with like your voice, whereas like British comedy and a little more Canadian comedy is about taking jokes that are like a 9 and then like kind of like throwing them away like they're 8s. So I kind of like having big, huge jokes and then sort of like disguise them like they're nothing. So that's kind of a bit of what I do. It's a little more like British.
How much prep time goes into 5 minutes on stage?
When I was doing 3 shows a night or more, I was putting together like close to almost a minute a week. So at the end of the year, I would usually have about 40 new minutes. So if I was doing an hour, it would take me maybe a year and a half if I was like kind of every night. And then I write 2 hours a day.
Writing 2 hours a day, practicing every day of the week, and ending up at the end of the week with 1 new good minute.
If you're lucky. You know what the best part is? Like when this pandemic started, because, stand-up sucks. Like it's a life of sacrifice. It's, it's not a good way to live. It's, toxic. It's just like not a good way to live, So when you just have to like really want to be the best at it. Like you got to have some reason for it, you know. But I always think it's funny when the pandemic started and you know did like 2 months of normal life. I'm focusing on videos and doing podcasts. I'm out night. I'm just like watching TV with the chick, and you're just like, oh, this is way better, dude. That sucked what I was doing. I was like, what the hell were we doing all that stand up for? That's garbage. Yeah. It's the worst life available. That's why when a lot of people go, oh, why is there, you know, not as many girls in stand up? You're like, they're not as crazy. Like a girl that, especially when a girl is like smart, you know, super funny enough to be great at stand up, like command a room, like that type of girl. It's like, do you know how many better options for life available for her there are than like being at dirty clubs with a bunch of dudes, like 3 shows a night, and then wake up? You go, why would any girl, especially if they're like good looking, they're like, yeah, this is a life for like dumb idiots. Like, you know, the kind of, you know, I could be a CEO. What am I doing? So
right.
I think
I never thought about it that way. There's, you know,
you're on the road and you're not even, if you're a girl, you're not even like, it's one thing being a young guy on the road and you're like, oh, you'll get into chicks and all that, you know, partying. Where it's like, girls don't even want to do that stuff, really. It's like, what, you're going to be a chick just like bang a new dude every day? It's like, no girl wants to do that. Like, oh, I just bang some, you know, fat dude in Albuquerque. It's like, what girl wants that life, right? So, yeah, it's unappealing to them.
That's interesting. You know, you'll never hear that as the reason why there's not enough women in stand-up. It's because stand-up sucks. There you go.
Yeah, it's terrible, dude.
And if you're good enough as a girl to be a good stand-up comedian, you probably are good enough to be a whole lot of other better things.
That's the problem with editors too, I always say, because, you know, like I make videos, so predominantly what that means is I'm an editor, right? But the reason it's impossible. So all the great editors I find are like YouTubers, like, or, you know, filmmakers, like the best ones I know, and a lot of them don't want to edit anymore, because to be an editor, it's like you need to have like good timing. You really understand like culture and pulse. You're usually like, you know, musical. So you have like a rhythm, which usually means you're good with energy. Like you understand like tones, you understand, you know, you just have all this stuff. And then you understand direction enough to be able to like, you know, talk to whoever you're working with. And then the type of person that has all that, it's like, what the hell would you be an editor? It's like, right. Why would that person be an editor? Like the best editors is the guy that's good at everything. You're like, yeah, why would the guy that's good at everything want to be a freaking editor unless it's like his stuff, you know? So it's very difficult to find really good editors. I think
I've had similar experiences trying to replace various components of my creative output or business or whatever. It's hard when not a lot of people do it, and if they're good at it, they're doing it for themselves.
Yeah, well, especially now. Why, you know, why wouldn't you?
Right, exactly. It's funny. You brought up editing as music related or reading energy. I told you I was a DJ back in the day. I DJ professionally for a number of years.
DJs took over, man.
With vinyl back in the 90s. Not none of this 2020 shit with all the computers, but actual records. Because I'm old. You can see me.
You got a big record collection?
I do. I got about 1,100 records, and that's pared down from about 10,000. Yeah, I was a professional full-time DJ for years. Dropped out of college, did it. And you really learn how to read a room. You learn how to read what works, exactly. how to experiment, how to mess with energy, how to bring it up, how to bring it down. You know, you learn if you're the opening act and you end your set with like the latest hit, you're never getting hired again because your job isn't to kill.
You're getting half the sound, half the lights next time, dude.
Right, exactly. Your job is to just slowly raise the temperature in the room. And the reason why I brought this up is because I think it translates to my Twitter. My Twitter is pretty good. I'm really good at Twitter.
Yeah.
I feel good about it. And like there is a sense about reading energy, reading the room, building things, taking different tones, different approaches.
Right thing at the right time.
Yeah, exactly.
I like to say with points, it's you want to say something that needs to be said that hasn't been said properly at the right time.
Yeah. Well, if you can nail that, that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good recipe. You know, but my strategy at times is just to throw as much stuff up against the wall, and hopefully some of it sticks. You can always delete it later. That is for sure.
It is all energy. You know what my theory? I was talking about the like DJs. It's kind of interesting because music's gone through like its own weird renaissance where, you know, like traditional, like 4 dudes, you know, playing in a band almost doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of, you know, a lot of people like, where did those guys go? It's like, well, people are smart, right? They sort of the same reason why people like me and my friends are, you know, doing this as opposed to like trying to get, you know, jobs on television right now. It's because this is better. The same way that if you look at any guy that would have been a band, now they're DJs, and the industry doesn't want to cover that. But there's a million of these DJs. Like I have friends that are in this band called Dubs, and they're like doing arenas, and you'll never really see them get covered by any of these things. And it's like, yeah, because they looked at the band thing and they're like, wow, that kind of is dying or whatever. It's like, what's popping off now? And now there's a bunch of like tattooed, skinny dudes with long hair that would have been in bands, and now they're DJs, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like interesting how it's like the people that, the gatekeep are always trying to rig the system, but they can't because, people react to things. They think they can just move everyone around how they want. And it's like, it doesn't really work that way.
No, they're just putting fingers in little holes in the flow of the energy, the tide comes.
It's exactly all back to like the energy thing.
And it's interesting that DJ become more prominent in this environment than in the past because information, content, it's almost free. I mean, it is free, but like it almost has no value. And the value today is really in curation. And so like Twitter feeds are aggregators and curators. We bring in people and guests and things in order to curate a whole process. DJing, very much the same thing. It's you're curating, creating energy, taking people on a journey, moving them forward in a direction. Curation going to be even more important as the barriers to content creation come down even lower and lower and lower, except when you can rise above the rest and still clearly demonstrate your technical superiority, your comedic superiority, etc., like you have been.
Yeah, it's a composite of a lot of skills, but even then, like, even just in my sketches, like I'm still curating a bunch of like New York comedians to put in my stuff. And, I do a podcast. It's that. So it's, they're all of those like skills are part of the composite, I think too.
Yeah. So tell us about the boyscast. The podcast is called Boyscast.
Yeah.
With Ryan Long. You can find that on YouTube also, along with his comedy channel, Ryan Long, youtube.com/Ryan Long Comedy. Everybody check that out. Tell us a little bit about the podcast.
So the Boyscast is the first podcast exclusively for the boys. And I started this. Also, I should say, if you're a girl listening and you try to listen to the Boyscast, we have electrocution software plugged into our RSS feed. So it will give you a shock. So if you want to, it's essentially, I think it was like 100,000 volts. So if you want to deal with that, that's your prerogative. But basically, it was kind of the stuff I was talking about a little before, where it's like, and I always say girls, but really what I mean is like, kind of feminine, masculine. But there's a lot of this energy of like, you can't say this and can't say that. It's like, how about this? You're not allowed to be there. So then we'll say what we want. And I kind of, it's an hour-long podcast that I do solo with the odd guest, but its majority is me. And I do, some rants. I go through articles. It's, a comedy podcast as well. But I mean, I guess there's not that much to discuss with a podcast. You're like, yeah, it's my podcast. If you like me, this is me talking for an hour about, a lot of different things every week. And
I was interested in the premise. I mean, Boyscast, I run an all men's organization. We've got over 400 members. Today's a launch day, actually.
NAMBLA.
Negative ghostwriter on a NAMBLA. Could you spell that out for me, please? And so I'm very familiar with creating men's spaces and providing content geared specifically for men.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where you're. I mean, so I'll tell you what originally had happened, because so in 2016, or probably before that, kind of when you're talking about 2015, like I was kind of getting really into, I don't know what you would call it, but sort of like, harping on like the woke stuff, right? Making fun of the buzzwords. And that's when it was really like infecting comedy. And I was kind of like getting really into making fun of it. In the 2016 Trump era, around like 2017, even, I was almost like moving past that, because I kind of felt like it was one of those things where most people were over it. Like, and again, that's changed. But at the time, so I was kind of not talking about, so it's almost like Louis C.K. when he does a bit about the N-word. The joke is about the fact that he's saying it. Like, it's all, we're talking about that. Whereas I'd kind of moved past that, and I was just doing like, men rule, girls suck kind of thing. And I was just saying that kind of stuff. And people were like, dude, you're not supposed to do that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, why not? Like, it was kind of that oblivious thing where you're like, explain to me from first principles why it's a problem for me to say that men are awesome. And they're like, well, you're just supposed to know that they have power and the feminine. And you're just like, it's almost just implied that you should know that you can't be like pro men, but if you kind of play dumb and they don't, most of these people don't know their positions, you know what I mean? They just know that you're not supposed to say that, and you go, well, why though? So I think it was kind of like a shit eating little bit I was doing. Like I was saying, one of the jokes that I first did that like went really viral kind of when I moved here was I was saying that there's 72 genders now, which means the men are better than 71 genders. And I was doing all that. And I was doing a lot of jokes where I kept saying boys, boys, boys. And it was, it's like tongue in cheek, but the underlying thing is people being like, well, you're not supposed to do that. And me like pretending I don't understand why when I do. So I think then I kind of, I think it was less about supporting men, and it's not necessarily a men's rights thing. It's more just like I'm saying, yo, dudes rock, dude. Like, what's funnier than me and my 10 friends hang out? That's like to me, that's like peak comedy. Me and like my boys that I went to high school with, like getting back together and yelling at each other for 10 hours. Like to me, that's the best. So I was just kind of saying that. And they're like, oh, dude suck. And I'm like, no, actually, we kind of rock.
Right. Hey, you have such a the way you're like, but why? That I need to be able to adopt that, because usually faced with that same circumstance, I go, but why? And so it's like you get a totally different reaction that way.
Yeah, you go, is that a problem that I said that?
Right. You're like, I don't know, I got it. See, you take it from the oblivious perspective, and I take it from the like, I've thought about this to the end of time, and I know exactly why you're wrong. Now you tell me why. And that doesn't work. That doesn't work. I know your approach works.
No, Norm Macdonald once described it. He's so funny at doing stuff like this, but he basically said, he goes, Bill Maher, he's always telling you how it is, and he acts like, he's the smartest guy in the room, and he's not. Whereas like, David Letterman's smarter than anyone, and he acts stupid, right? I remember Norm Macdonald, like he was on a radio show, and they were like, who do you think is the most violent? And he was like, well, obviously the black people. And they go, what? Well, you can't say that. And he goes, well, I mean, black people are poorer than white people, and poor people are more likely to be more violent than rich people. And they're like, what? He goes, do you not think that black people are poorer than white people? So it's like that idea of taking the conclusion, like, if you think that, well, then you have to think this, kind of the same way that if you say that, there's too many, like, there's too many white people in law or something like that. Like, you can't not extrapolate that you're saying there's too much Jewish lawyers. Like, if you're saying there needs to be less white people in law, like the obvious conclusion of that is if you replaced 50% of those, you're saying that there needs to be less Jew lawyers. So it's like a lot of these, things that people are pushing have all these other like conclusions like baked into them that they're not willing to accept or take credit for. So a lot of it's like, you're following their, but you know them already. So you're kind of following their logic to the bad conclusions, not the good conclusions, and then forcing them to, explain themselves out of that puzzle mentally until they just give up and just sit down. All right, I'll just laugh, dude. I'm not going to play this game anymore.
Right. If only them giving up meant laughing in the real world. They never give up. They always double down, and they always make things way, way worse.
If you trick people, like I'll do, and this is not my trick. A lot of people do this, but let's say I do a joke about like something about like a pedophile, right? Which is not really the most tumultuous topic, and and then everyone laughs, right? I can usually get people to like kill with a pedophile joke, and then I'll do something about like a woman being fat, and people will be like, "Whoa!" And I go, "You guys were laughing at me having sex with a kid like 25 seconds ago, and now you're like, oh, let's get the blogs involved. I said a woman's overweight." And you they're like, yeah, why? And then you do that like 5 more times. Everyone's like, I don't know, dude. I can't like keep up with what my brain's telling me to laugh at and not laugh at. And I think they just, to some degree, they'll submit to you intellectually because you've like outsmarted them 5 times.
I like that.
And again, that's not, to make a point. It's that the point is to, kill. So, after 20 minutes, eventually everyone's like, yeah, let's stop like using my brain and just use my body to laugh instead of, trying to have that extra filter of like, is this one okay? Is this one okay? Because every time they do that, they're wrong. And I show them why.
Oh, you just made me think of something very interesting. Today, we are organized politically around empathetically triggered tribes, right? You see an image, and one group of people will react one way to it. Other group of people react a different way to the same image and the same video or whatever. And that's how we're getting sorted. You see a guy with his knee on the guy's neck or whatever, or I don't know, maybe that one's a bad example. You see a million things. They sort us empathetically. And the reason why that's very powerful is because it's pre-language. It's below below where we speak and where we think to ourselves and such.
Yeah.
Comedy also, you just said laugh with your body. That to me indicates that like comedy is something that like it's getting more at our base, more at our instincts, more at our
When
sort of
it's good.
animal side. Yeah.
Yeah, when it's good. And there's even a difference between, you know, you are so right. And it's like, I always, even just to go back to that, like I've always said, you know, a lot of these people that are out there, you know, protesting this or that in New York, I'm like, if you were born over there, you'd be protesting flag burning. Like you're just wired to be like a hall monitor. That's who you are, right? And it's true. So,
Right.
you know, there's a certain type of person that, you know, becomes, you know, joins the club and, you know, wants to be the puritanical authoritarian. And that's like how they are. Right. So you would, if you were born in like, you know, Pakistan or, you know, wherever, you'd be, you know, the one, you know, collecting the stones for the stoning. Like you're just like that. You know what I mean? Whatever it is. But the base level thing, I even taught, you know, there's even like different personality types that are different for that too. Like if I always like the idea that you sort of talk to men more with words and women more to with your energy. And
Thank you, Mystery.
yeah. Okay. So he talked about that?
No, I don't know, but you sound like Mystery 2.0.
Yeah,
Ryan
I'm
Long
using mine to make people laugh, not put up numbers.
Right.
But because, and this is probably like, you know, it's probably a negative and a positive for both of us. Like, you know, so many times when they're not getting it, it's like, because the girl's not listening to the guy's trying to argue with words and the girl's like, doesn't like the way he's arguing and all that. Right. It's just what it is. But so you can be like, you can say to men like, yo, women are the worst, but to women, you're like, I'm just kidding though. And the men didn't even like notice your energy that like, they're just like, oh yeah, dude, this guy hates women. And the women are like, he's kidding. So I think a lot of times, you know, that's when you can really be talking to like all the different people at once is when you're starting to really, you know, get on that like wave of comedy where you're like, oh, I just own this like crowd. I'm like surfing. I can kind of do anything right now. You're just operating on all cylinders comedically or something.
That's awesome, man. And you said it's taken you 7 years.
No, I've been doing comedy for like 11 years now, but
okay.
So I've been doing art since, you know, I'm making videos since I was 12, you know, and I'm 35 right now. But stand-up comedy, I kind of started around like when I was 25, like kind of post band years when I was doing the videos, I was doing the DVDs, and I was like, I guess I should do this stand-up thing. And then, you know, you kind of start doing that and you're like, oh, this is a whole like life.
But you went for it, right? You went for it. You did the shows, you did the nightclubs, you did the basements.
Yeah.
And
it's my life.
Yeah. It's taken you some time. You've made a major investment in this. Do you feel like you've mastered your craft yet?
In terms of like the base level, but there's just like so many levels, like, well, not base level. Like I think that I've mastered the level where it's like, I understand like the complexity of stand up. I've made a killer hour that's culturally relevant, and I've replicated that multiple times. I could kill in most crowds, but like, there's just so many more levels, you know, there's people that have done that 20 times. And then you're always kind of learning new things. And I think that I'm pretty good at finding new things. Like I was, even in the last year before all this stuff started, I was really like zoning in on how can I like kill without like any energy, like really in second gear, as opposed to drilling anything down. So I was like really just trying to like calmly like build the energy and like sort of building confidence. Like, you know, you talked about the Dave Chappelle thing, like someone like that he was almost like more of a philosopher now than a stand-up in a lot of ways. Like he'll come out and he'll kind of tell, you know, go a minute without a jokes. Like I still don't really have like the courage for those sort of things, because I'm starting to experiment with things like that where I'm like, can I, you know, pull that off? So it's always about like that next trick or that next thing. And then you have that in your bag. Like I think I have a good bag of stuff, but like there's always more, you know, things you can master and put in that bag.
Good. At age 35, it'd be an awful shame just to be like,
yeah, I gotta figure it out, dude.
Done. I got nothing more to learn.
Videos, you know, I'm gonna make a movie now. I think this is the next thing we're gonna do. So yeah, you know what it is. There's always something else, you know, and you just have to be not afraid to like get worse a little bit before you get better. Because
ain't that the truth? I remember when I was like, I'm gonna write a book. And I on Twitter, I'm gonna write a book. I'm writing this book. And then I sat down to write the book, and I was like, Google, how do you write?
Yeah.
It took me a year just to figure out really how
Yeah.
to write a book. Not how to write a bad book, but how to write a great book, which I think I
Yeah.
did. Democrat to Deplorable. Get it on Amazon, guys. 200 reviews, almost all 5 stars. Go
Hell
pick
yeah.
one up. Still selling well 2.5 years later. It's going
That
to be
must have been the same thing you said, where
timeless.
you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna start a book," and then 6 months in, you're like, "Oh, I just like this is my whole thing now. I'm just like an author."
Right?
Yeah, it wasn't just like, "Oh, I'll just also write a book." You're like, "No, no,
No.
I'm dropping everything, and that's gonna be my thing. I go to sleep thinking about and thinking about in the shower and all that stuff."
Wake up
Right?
at 4 o'clock in the morning every day
Yeah.
to grind it out all the time.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when you jump in with both feet and you take on something new and you have to fuck up at first, that's the best way to learn it. It really is. What is coming up next for you, sir? I got a couple more questions. I want to know what's next. What's next for Ryan Long Comedy at youtube.com/Ryan Long Comedy? What do you got coming out? You gonna make a movie? What are you gonna do? You
Yeah,
continue
we're
doing
talking about it.
sketches?
Well, I mean, I am doing like a sketch every month, like a legitimate, premium sketch every Monday. I'm doing a street video every Wednesday and my podcast every Friday, and in addition to like a million other things, and I'm touring. And so right now it's like, I'm on like a 70-hour, grind right now. It's not like I'm like, how do I fill this time, dude? I'm like, I'm pretty already a little getting tight. So I think right now, like everything I'm doing is working, and I'm like excited about it, and I'm excited about the things I'm saying. So I'm focused on that. Right. And even I'll notice, when I take a month when I was doing all these other things, and I was like, you know what, I think I'm not paying attention. I did what you said, or what I said, we were saying, when I go, my full mind is going to be, on sketches. I'm like, I really got to barrel down. And then that month, all those 4 were like way more viral. And it was like, there's a big difference between like kind of also doing it. And it was like, my whole mind was there, like trying to make the right point at the right time that I feel that I really believe, even more importantly, so, but I think, so that's why I'm not like pursuing, I'm taking like meetings and stuff like that, but most of them I'm kind of saying no to things. I'm saying no to a lot of stuff, but the movie, the reason why I brought that up, which is why I like it, because there's all these places that have all these gatekeepers, but like making a movie is the one thing that you can make, and it can sort of like have a big, mainstream impact, and everyone can see it. You can do your own like press tour. You can have a big success without anyone saying yes. You just need to find financing, which like I have. So that's the reason why I'm like kind of excited about the idea of that, making that independently, having no one tell me to do, just like make a movie that I, would love to be, somewhat of a voice of a, little small generation of people that like me anyway.
Yeah. Well, you're clearly already becoming the voice of a generation. If views mean anything, and the cultural content and the relevance. I mean, it's so biting and so true and hysterical. All the sketches that I've watched, and I watch them every
Thanks,
week.
man.
Guys, sub to that and get those, and show them to your mom and your sister and your cousin and your uncle and that other guy too, because it really does sort of narrow the gap. It brings both sides together over the target and makes them really think about what's happening, and points out the absurdity, and does it in a very in a very funny way. How long does it take for you to put together one of those sketches for each week? I mean, that's
It
a lot of
obviously
work,
like
dude.
depends, but I try, with stuff like this, my advice to people that are kind of like on grinds like this is you just have to like figure out how to give yourself deadlines. So I'm like, you have 4 hours to write the script, and then I shoot it, and then I edit in 4 or 5 hours, and it's like that. I can't be taking more than like 3 days a week on like one thing. So I try to really be like, have you ever been doing something where you're editing or something like that, or writing, and you're like, okay, there's an easy way to do this and there's a hard way to do this. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, yeah, I could edit this in 8 hours and it'll be kind of fun, or I could edit this in 4 hours and it's going to be hell. Like, I kind of lean more into those where I'm just like, no, this, you blah, 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 and take that, like, instead of like, watching all the footage and do this, it's like, no, making like hard decisions while I'm writing the script, not leaving like decisions for editing. So I kind of do the tumultuous like method to try to, make things be done quicker.
Yeah. Method, systems, all of it.
That's
That's what I've been working. That's what I've been working on myself. You have to have the systems. You have to have the methods. And in my business, I use, technology just to try to all I'm trying to do is just like put a multiplying factor on myself, right? Like
Yeah.
I can only produce so much, but if I have a system, if I have processes, if I have support network, I can do much, much more. And look to 2021 audience out there that we're going to do a lot more shows. We got Christopher Rufo coming up on Thursday also, who's sort of the other edge of this blade that's being held to the neck of the woke. You got Ryan Long over here stabbing them in the throat, showing them how stupid I almost said the R word. I got banned from Twitter once for saying R.
Really?
Never saying that R again.
I'm pretty liberal with saying that word.
So am I. It's really troubling. It's really
on
troubling.
Stage. Yeah, I'm pretty like, I'll say all the words.
I will too. I don't even remember what we were talking about anymore. Oh yeah, showing people how woke is messed up and retarded. Woke is retarded. And then Christopher's coming out.
I got in a fight at a show once for saying that word. I mean, everyone's like that's done stand up has kind of got whatever, like has one of these stories where like you got into it with like a heckler or whatever. But so this guy was like blasted, right? He was at the show, and this was barely a show, you know what I mean? Like at a bar show, kind of like showcase style, like 8 comedians and 20 people in the audience. Half of them aren't even paying attention. There's like a game on, that kind of situation. So this he's like drunk and he's kind of, yelling at the comedians all night or whatever. And I'm doing a joke. My joke about that was some version of, I won't tell the joke, but the premise was like, they said that they made a law that you can't have sex with people that are like a certain level of, mentally retarded. So it's like if someone's, a certain level of like their mental capacities, you can't have sex with them. And I was like, sure. But I'm sure that like when they made that law, there was a few like retarded dudes like, yo, did you just make it illegal to have sex with me? Like, I don't know. You thought I was crushing it before. You're getting a prison sentence to having sex with me. That was kind of the, whatever. It goes from there, right? But then this guy comes up and he's like, yo, F you, blah, blah. And he goes, yeah, my son is, I don't know, mentally challenged. And I was like, yeah, where do you think he got it from or whatever? Like, that's what and he fucking threw his beer at me and he like, sure. And then everyone grabbed him and he went outside and he was like waiting for me. It was like a whole debacle. He was like, ugh. So, and
that's tough though. It is tough because I do have friends who have special needs kids too. And I'm just not talking about them. Just like when I shit all over teachers and teachers unions right now for keeping their kids out of school, I'm not shitting on the teachers who I want to teach. I'm shitting on the teachers.
Do you ever have stuff where you've said it and you felt bad and you were like, that was too much?
Occasionally. Very, very rarely.
Yeah, I've had those like, on stage where I, said the wrong thing. I'll tell you one specifically. I remember being on stage and like, there was this like really big girl in the audience, right? And she was with like a black dude and I was, whatever, talking about this and that, and they were talking, and then I was talking to these white chicks, and I was like, oh, you guys like the black guy? And I was like, oh, you're just mad that the black guy went with another one of our fat white chicks. And I said that and everyone laughed or whatever. But then as soon as I said it, I could see her like slink down, and I was like, in my mind, I was just kind of saying like the idea that like, but it was just so, I was like this, and I remember legitimately like just being like, leaving stage and being like, I didn't like that, dude. I felt like bad. I felt like it was just mean. I didn't feel like it was funny. It wasn't worth it. And the worst part is since then, 2 dudes that were at that show have come up to me and they go, dude, when you called that chick fat, that was the funniest thing I ever seen. And I was like, you people are animals, dude. I felt terrible.
So what do you do? What do you do with something like that when you actually feel bad?
That's into your psyche now, that's in my psyche now. And I think that, if that specific situation, I kind of know what my like conscience's boundaries are. Like I don't mind making fun of like that stuff in general, but I don't think that, like you said, it's like if you're making fun of like the general idea of like retarded or whatever it is, it's like, that's different than being like, look at this friggin',
No.
So I think that it's just, you find out like where your own boundaries are, like in everything. Right. I'll tell you what mine are. Like a 500 pound girl sitting in the front row and me like calling her fat, like didn't like doing that.
And her going like this,
yeah, dude. It was, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that does so, suck.
And you have those all the time and you kind of go and you leave and you go, all right, not going to do. Yeah. That felt like mean. I didn't feel comfortable with that.
But in your business, how many words have you uttered? And if you have a 99.9% success rate,
Yeah.
you're gonna have that's still a lot of fumbles and a lot of bad tweets from me, and a lot of stumbles in podcasts and whatever
Right.
else. I've been there. I can just delete them. No, I delete them. It never happened. Never
Yeah,
happened.
my
No.
friend Corinne Fisher, who has a pretty big podcast, the Guys We Fuck podcast, but she when I first moved here, she told me, she was like, "There's this program, and just every 6 months you just type it in, it deletes every tweet that's over a year old." And I was like, "Well, why?" And you're like, "Yeah, why would I ever want to tweet that's more than a year old? It's just literally, a get you fired document, get you fired document."
Yeah.
So I just did that when I moved here. I deleted it. You just press it and just deletes every tweet that's over a year old. I'm like, why would you need more
That
than a year
makes
old?
that makes good sense. I use Twitter as a microblogging platform, and so I have long tweet threads from many years back, all woven together. I have a whole tapestry of threads, and
Screenshot them.
I do, but the point is like starting from my pinned tweet on my Twitter thread. If you go down that thread, it takes you to basically through my whole life.
Right.
Every product I offer, every experience that I've had, every blog post, every
All
video.
right, now I'm starting to miss my tweets.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in my top tweet,
My life.
it's been seen almost 3 million times now, and so I know that it's working, right? And it brings people
Yeah.
all the way into the ecosystem and whatnot. But if you're not in my business and if you're just a regular person, man, I would delete every tweet after every
Hey, Corinne,
day.
Ryan speaking. Is there a reverse of that program?
Right, exactly. How do I undelete that shit? Dude, it's been really good talking to you. I love comedy because, well, one, makes you laugh, but two, it is a powerful weapon and an essential tool and a last remaining, if shrinking, space for freedom and to say things that are crazy and out there for a laugh and for really no other reason. And for that, it has a special place. And I hope that we don't lose it. It feels like we're losing it. It feels like comedy is kind of getting killed. But I do believe that, the tighter the restrictions on anything, the better the reaction, the subversive reaction coming out on the other side. You're definitely part of that. So congratulations on your success there. Everybody go down to YouTube. Hey, you're on YouTube right now. Hit sub here and then go to youtube.com/Ryan Long Comedy. Pick that up. And guys, if you think my beard's been looking good lately, it's because I've been using this amazing new beard product from madvikingbeard.com. Go down there and check it out. If you use the code Jack10, you get 10% off. I'm trying this out for the first time. They want to sponsor me. We'll see if you guys buy beard products. If you do, go to madvikingbeard.com, use Jack10, get a discount. My beard's never been silkier or smoother.
That's a good one for you to
than
be doing.
it is today.
Yeah.
Thank
That's
you very much.
Yeah, that's what you should be selling, beard wax.
Beard wax, exactly right. And also come down and follow me on Twitter at Jack Murphy Live. It's Ryan Long Comedy as well. Dude, you said you're on tour. What are you touring for? Is there anywhere that we can come see you? What are you doing?
Well, maybe tour is not the right word. Weekends. So I did like 4 or 5 weekends, but right now I don't have anything booked. I'm just doing like little things around New York. But I did. I forget. I'm so new to America, and but I forget the names. But like Worcester, is that one?
Worcester sauce.
Worcester, is that something?
Worcester.
Okay. Yeah, Worcester. I did there. I did. We just went to Tampa. I did Austin, and I did somewhere deep in New Jersey. I did like 5 clubs, but I think right now I'm stepping back from the touring because it was like, I don't know, the clubs are all kind of closed down. No one wants to go. They make you wear a mask. It's like distant. I don't know. It just kind of sucks. So I think I'm like kind of focusing on other things till comedy just comes back, and then I'm going to come back. Although we did Tampa, and Tampa, like, they don't give a crap, dude. We did like a 400-person theater. It was like sold out. We're at bars. No one had masks on. It was awesome.
Yeah. Florida, land of the free.
Yeah,
they really are. I'm gonna have to get back down to Florida myself. Well, if you ever come back down DC way, let me know.
I just did. Yeah, that's another one I did. I did DC.
Oh, you did, did you do the improv?
No, I did. I can't remember what it's called. But it's in Washington. Okay, whatever. Forget it.
Washington.
Dude, I'm
that's
so
the
stupid.
city
I
in
hate
America.
You know what the thing is? Even recently, though, people go with all me not knowing anything, and they're like, oh, "Okay, well, you're Canadian," and I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't know that stuff in Canada either." That's stupid. Yeah, I'm just dumb with all that kind of stuff. I'm loopy.
Totally oblivious. The
Yeah.
what kind of narrator
I'll
was
definitely
it?
come back to Washington though for when this is over for a real tour. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, man. The improv on DC gets a ton of
Yeah,
great people. Ton of great
I've
people
heard
through
about
there.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, you should do that. That's where I saw Norm Macdonald, as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
who I just saw recently in Billy Madison. He was great.
Yeah. The Sandman.
I showed my kids. I have 3 kids. My youngest is 8, and she was asleep. And they're like, let's watch an adult movie. How about Billy Madison? Kids had never seen it. They loved it.
It's great.
All right, we're going to wrap this up, fellas. Ryan Long Comedy. Everybody check it out. Ryan, thank you so much. Thanks for the videos.
Yeah,
I love the videos, and I believe that they're doing good in the world as well, pointing out the absurdities of all the things, showing the horseshoe of the far left and the far right as well, too, making them all look out to be as dumb and retarded as they really are. So thank you very much for that, and thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Jack. You're the man.
Yeah, you are too, Ryan. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks, everybody. Subscribe, smash, share, all the things. You know it. Talk to you guys soon. Thursday, 12 p.m. Christopher Rufo. Peace out.
Peace, dude.